Hello and welcome to ELL Plus with me, Anilesh Kumar.
And me, Sizova. Our headlines this week.
Protesters gather in their thousands to march against US President Donald Trump.
Members of the East London Mosque fear for the consequences of Trump executive order.
And a threat of closure to 37 post offices nationwide has an impact for residents in New Cross.
Thousands of Londoners protested against the American President Trump and an executive order which blocks citizens of Iran, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, Sudan and Yemen from entering the US. The executive order has been called a Muslim ban by protesters and civil rights activists. In connection with the protests, a petition to cancel the president's UK state visit has been signed by more than 1 million people. Hackney South and Shoreditch, Hackney North and Stoke Newington has the highest proportion of the signatories in the country. My colleague Anilesh went to the demonstration in front of 10 Downing Street.
It was a protest against the most powerful man in the world, Donald John Trump.
Let them in and let them stay! Donald Trump, USA! Visit! No hatred, no fear! Refugees are welcome here, no hatred!
There was anger, emotion and outrage as Londoners gathered to voice their discontent towards what's been named Donald Trump's Muslim ban. They also appeared to be disappointed with Theresa May's response.
We need to resist the hatred of immigrants and people of colour. We need to resist it, whether it's in the United States or whether it's here in the UK.
How can he prohibit the entrance to the United States to these innocent children?
Our Prime Minister is weak, weak, weak. She is the stooge of the most despised, most hateful president in the history of the United States in modern times.
With nearly 2 million signatures against the proposed President Trump's state visit, in an act of togetherness, thousands of people from all backgrounds assembled on number 10.
We're absolutely horrified by Donald Trump's decision to ban Muslims from entering the UK from 7 countries. We want him to hear how wrong it is, and we want Theresa May to ask him to revoke that order now.
Amid the smoke of uncertainty, there are those for whom the solution remains loud and clear.
Women are not born to be abused. They are the heart of the rose. Please, don't shut doors on me. I'm a peaceful woman.
I love my country. For those who are fanning the flames of hate around the world and telling us that they are in fact the real patriots, I say to them, look at me and take a look at us, because we are what real patriots look like.
Much ink has been spilled over drawing parallels between Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. And as Reagan said, that peace is not the absence of conflict. It actually is the ability to deal with the conflict. Now the biggest question here is, what is the meaning of this latest decision by Donald Trump for protesters like these? And especially when it comes to areas like Tower Hamlets and Croydon, which have one of the most diverse demographics in the country. In Whitechapel, Tower Hamlets, the East London Mosque serves the largest Muslim community in the UK. Now here, Trump and his executive order, which bans citizens of 7 different Muslim countries from entry into the US, were met with shock and fighting spirit. Floyd reports.
Allahu Akbar. Midday prayer at the East London Mosque. The neighbouring London Muslim Centre hosted a meeting of civil rights groups to discuss another anti-Trump demonstration on Saturday.
Well, London's a very multicultural city. You've got communities, different faith groups living side by side together in harmony, and it's a very good example of how multiculturalism works. And so Londoners overall were very horrified by this ban, as we saw on Monday. In terms of the Muslim communities themselves, I think from what I see, I think the Muslim communities themselves feel fear because it's a direct attack on their communities.
The East London Mosque chose to open its doors to the civil rights groups, not as a political statement, but because they believe the executive order does affect Muslims in East London as well.
So if you ask any Muslim here in Whitechapel, in the heart of London's East End, you know, why this issue matters to them, it's because of the ramifications and the effects and implications it has on Muslim communities throughout the world. If it is allowed to happen in America, then it will be allowed to happen in Europe. It will be allowed to happen should a fascist party take power in the UK. It would be allowed to happen in the UK, and that's why we need to make a firm stance. If we allow it to happen just once, and even if it's just, you know, just for like 90 days, if we allow it to happen, then it sets a precedence that it can happen anywhere else.
According to figures, more than 45% of Tower Hamlets residents are Muslim. Charlie Floyd, ELL+.
On Saturday, members of New Cross local community held a demo calling for their local post office to be saved. The New Cross Gate branch was among a list of 37 across the country, which are said to be sold off or closed in the coming months. Niels Jakob was at the demonstration.
Where do we go with no PO?
This community won't give up its post office without a fight. Around 60 people came out to protest against plans to sell off or close what they say is an essential service. Laura Wirtz is a member of the local community. She said she organised the demo after reading about the potential closure on East London lines.
They want to make the post office turn a profit, which has not been the purpose of a post office in its whole history of centuries. And, you know, it's a community service. Taxpayers are happy to pay for it, as we always have. We don't expect it to turn a profit, and the directors shouldn't be bringing that culture into a public service like this. People have been shocked and horrified to hear that this is under threat, and they really want to do something to save it.
Vicky Foxcroft, MP for Lewisham and Deptford, said there were too many uncertainties about the future of the post office.
Does it actually make financial sense what they're proposing to do? You know, we've not had answers to any of these questions at the moment. You know, so I, for one, will be raising them with the post office, you know, alongside with my trade union colleagues, but also making sure that these issues are raised in Parliament as well.
This area is more akin to smaller businesses. I think for them to find a large partner such as WH Smith's is going to be difficult. It'd be great if they could, but I don't believe they will do.
Also in attendance was a representative from the Communication Workers Union.
From experience, the offices that have been what they call franchised, or got rid of, the service has always been diminished. There's 267 different transactions you can do at a post office. You ain't going to learn that in a fortnight, you know. So you need to be able to promote that position. That ain't going to happen. The moment you do it, the service gets diminished, the community suffers, and that ain't right.
Organisers say they will be holding further demonstrations in the coming weeks, as well as handing a petition to Paula Vennels, CEO of the Post Office. Niels Jakob, New Cross Gate, ELL+.
Fair Share, the biggest food redistribution charity in the UK, is urgently calling for more volunteers to join their warehouse in Deptford. To sustain a quality food in, food out routine to feed more than 20,000 Londoners in need on a weekly basis, Fair Share in Deptford warehouse require more than 30 volunteers to participate in their work every day.
We're like the bridge between the surplus food being available and the communities that have vulnerable people in need. So the food that we capture is great fresh food, it's longer life ambient food, there's some chilled food, frozen food, and the quality of that food is fantastic. So we're really helping those charities to gain access to food that they wouldn't be able to afford to buy if they were buying it direct from normal retailers.
Now, to mark the beginning of LGBT History Month, Hackney Council held a reception at the Hackney Museum. The exhibition was for local LGBT business owners, performers, artists, charities and residents to look at how LGBT relations could be further improved in the borough.
It's been almost a year in the making. We had one of our best presences at Pride last year, and the group that helped organise that with Stick the Artist and Staff Network just thought when I got elected and having a gay mayor as well that we could really breathe life into LGBT History Month. And so tonight was about launching LGBT History Month, but also saying to the community here in Hackney, we want to support you to make all the work the council does in celebrating our diversity even better.
Also in attendance was Hackney street artist Stick, who created the gay pride flag for Hackney last year.
Now, we're going live to our reporter Eugenia Dolina, who is in Elephant and Castle. She has news on the proposed extension of the Bakerloo Tube line. The line currently ends at Elephant and Castle, but the proposal will see its service in Lewisham with the end station at Cotford. Eugenia, what can you tell us about the future extension?
So right now I'm staying near Elephant and Castle station, which is reportedly going to be upgraded to accommodate the further extension of Bakerloo line. The scheme was originally proposed in 2014, but it took more than 2 years of assessing the new routes to actually start planning it.
And what is happening to the scheme right now?
Right now, the public is welcome to comment on the further plans. So the consultation exercise is due to start pretty soon in early 2017 and is likely to take around 10 weeks. It will engage local authorities as well as stakeholders and landowners of the sites affected.
Eugenia, what are the proposed changes?
So here at the Elephant and Castle, we're likely to have an upgraded ticket hall and platform concourse. Besides, they're going to build 2 new stations at the Old Kent Road in its northern and southern parts. And we will hopefully see a new New Cross Gate tube station with interchanges to National Railway services as well as London Overground. And the same is likely to happen to Lewisham. Besides, they're proposing new ventilation shafts between all these stations. And as it is common for projects of this scale and size, the funding for the project will be outlined in the latest revision of TfL business plan. This is from me. Back to you.
Thank you, Eugenia.
Now we're slipping into a short break. We'll be back with more news from South and East London.
You're watching ELL Plus with me, Sizova.
And me, Anilesh Kumar.
Our top stories today: thousands of Londoners protested against President of the United States, Donald Trump, and his policies.
In New Cross, there were also protests as people gathered in support of their local post office.
Coming up, we have a fresh report from Westminster where local MPs are refusing to vote for Brexit's Article 50.
And we'll see how International Holocaust Memorial Day was commemorated in Hackney.
After the Brexit bill was published last week, the Sub-Vier Court decided that MPs must vote on the bill before triggering Article 50. Votes were cast, and with a majority vote of 498 to 114 opposing, Brexit plans can now commence. Katie Thompson reports.
After a 17-hour-long debate in Parliament these past few days, MPs have voted in favour of leaving the EU. A 3-line whip was imposed by Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn to encourage MPs to support the bill.
Roughly a quarter of Labour MPs, 13 of which were frontbenchers, rejected the bill. Amongst those opposed was Shadow Whip Vicky Foxcroft, who was one of the key enforcers in Corbyn's decision. When asked if Shadow Ministers would resign, the Corbyn team has said decisions will be taken at a later stage.
Acer Bennett, assistant comment editor from The Telegraph, has been closely following the Brexit negotiations.
Let's take Vicky Foxcroft and Heidi Alexander, for example. They represent Lewisham, a very heavily Remain voting constituency, so they were in their right mind, I guess, to follow through what constituents wanted and to vote against the Brexit bill. The trouble is, Jeremy Corbyn did want everyone in the Labour Party to not block the Brexit bill. So in this kind of 3-line whip level of party discipline, it was completely ignored by these rebels. I mean, welcome to the new kind of politics, I guess.
The white paper outlining the Brexit strategy will be published today. For now, the message is clear. Brexit means Brexit. Katie Thompson, Westminster, ELL+.
Each year, Holocaust Memorial Day takes place at the end of January, a day that marks the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi death camp. The day commemorates millions of people who have lost their lives through the Holocaust and subsequent genocides in Cambodia, Rwanda, Bosnia and Darfur. Our reporter Vicky attended this year's Holocaust Memorial Day in Hackney.
Hackney Council's Holocaust Memorial Day was a time to unite, remember and reflect. Schools from around the borough and council representatives commemorated those who lost their lives during the Nazi regime and subsequent genocides around the world.
Well, we do this every year. It was really important that we involved our schools in that, and that's part of but becomes part of their education. One thing that was new this year, which I was particularly delighted with, was to have the Jewish school, Simon Mark's school, and the Olive School, which is a Muslim school, singing "We Shall Overcome." I mean, I think that absolutely typified Hackney and what we want to achieve in Hackney.
The service included a diverse range of songs, readings and performances from Hackney residents. Even a Holocaust survivor shared her experience of living through persecution.
And you shoot us in our backs.
People who experienced the Shoah, the Holocaust, not many of them are with us anymore. So it behoves us to remind the next generation of what happened and to make sure it doesn't happen again, even though it has happened since.
This year's Holocaust Memorial Day asks audiences to think about what happens after genocide and of their own responsibilities in the wake of such a crime. With reports suggesting Holocaust denial is on the rise, should more be done to educate people about the Holocaust? Mr. Jacobs is a teacher at one of the local schools that took part in the Memorial Day service.
I think it's absolutely vital that we educate everyone about the Holocaust, but especially young people, because we're looking to them in the future, and it's them that need to be aware of the things that have happened to make sure they don't happen again.
In a time of great political movement, both in the UK and overseas, events like Holocaust Memorial Day gives people the opportunity to pause and remember some of the most significant moments in world history. Vicky, Hackney, ELL+.
And now here is Luke Radcliffe with some more news and brief from the local boroughs.
Thank you, Anilesh. Before we get onto that, we have a breaking update. It's been announced that while we were recording, a deal has been struck between Southern Rail and ASLEF, the train drivers' union, whose members had been striking for months over planned changes. Now, Lutfer Rahman, the former mayor of Tower Hamlets, is rumoured to be attempting a political comeback. This despite the fact that he is personally debarred from political office until 2021. Rahman was deposed of his mayoral position in 2015. However, he has now been linked to the formation of a new political party called Tower Hamlets Together. A meeting, which is alleged to have been about the new political party, was held at a location in Mile End. It was publicised after a WhatsApp message containing details was shared. ELL+ reporters were in attendance and witnessed a physical confrontation as a BBC journalist was forcefully ejected from the room. A coat rail has been placed in Stoke Newington Library to provide free coats for those in need. The grassroots initiative was set up by local resident Rachel Murrell. Originally introduced as a means to provide for the homeless, it has since been widened to anyone that is in need of a coat. The owner of a local dry cleaners, Mustafa Tessimel, has donated more than 20 coats for the rail. And finally, you can find plenty more of what's happening locally, including the results of the Tower Hamlets Young Mayor election, or where to find the best coffee in East London, on our website.
Thanks, Luke, but before you go, I would like to ask you, could you give us a sense about this pollution issue in London?
Yeah, of course. Nearly 10,000 Londoners have their lives reduced by air pollution every year. I went to Tower Hamlets with a campaign group who have a more hands-on approach to cleaning up the capital's air.
These volunteers are on the hunt for careless polluters. They're part of a cross-borough scheme called Idling Action that's trying to encourage motorists to switch off their engines while stationary.
We're walking the streets on this lovely January day to try and
speak to any idling drivers we find to basically educate them that idling is unnecessary, it's polluting, and it's actually an offence.
They work with 12 councils and are one of the first visible signs of Sadiq Khan's groundbreaking £875 million initiative to improve air quality in London.
When you're stationary, you will reduce the pollution for yourself. We have black levels of pollution, so which is the highest level, and it's because of the weather conditions we have at the moment. It's very still, it's cold, and that means the pollution isn't going anywhere. So people are very aware, and they're very happy to turn off normally.
Using a smartphone app, they then log details of their interactions and collate it into scientific data.
Basically, this information is just for analysis purposes, so we can know exactly how many people we reach and see what kind of effect we're having out there, because we will collate this with other information from other idling events that we have done and put it together and see exactly what kind of impact we're having on the community.
As well as engaging with motorists, the team hand out pollution-themed games in an effort to educate children. In fact, one of the most common idling hotspots is outside schools.
You're not going to necessarily get people to stop driving their car, but I think if you can make sure they turn their engine off when they're not using it, it's a very simple thing to do that I'm sure has quite, high benefits of doing that. So.
Though pollution levels have been falling over the years, latest figures from Public Health England showed that Tower Hamlets accounted for more than 7% of London's pollution-related early deaths. Luke Radcliffe, Tower Hamlets, ELL+.
And you can find more on the Mayor of London's attempt to clean up air pollution, including the ultra-low emission zone scheme, on our website. We're going to turn now to the world of art, echoing the report we had last week on the talented young artist Keith Church. Keith Church was a student at Goldsmiths in 1975, and now he's finally given his first exhibition 35 years after his murder. Our reporter Melissa Fernando takes us closer into the artist's work.
Curated by his cousin, Professor Kurt Barling, a former TV journalist, the exhibition entitled Urge to Paint has finally come to public light after being kept within the family's care.
Keith was murdered aged 27. The murderer was never found. It's an unsolved crime. There are very few unsolved murders in Britain. This is one of them. And the family have never really been able to get full closure because of that. And they've kept the paintings almost as a way of keeping hold of Keith.
When Keith Church started painting his emotions and creativity on canvas, he certainly was clueless that his paintings will get to be exhibited 35 years after he was stabbed to death in Broxburn, a case that is still unsolved in Britain.
There's that instinct to keep it private, but also that instinct to share it, overlaid with the fear of opening up the wound of his murder because it's unresolved. And so it's been very difficult all the way through, even the day before the exhibition began.
From the first drop of paint on the canvas to the art exhibition, it involves a lot of mixed emotions, skills, drives and behaviors, each piece with a story of its own.
To help people think about the glory of his work. This was a young man who was extremely industrious. That much work in 6 years is extraordinary. It shows he was a compulsive painter. The Urge to Paint title comes from his own writing because he had that compulsion to paint.
Goldsmiths, together with the artist's family, have produced an art exhibition of some of his artworks from the 2,000 pieces from his collection.
And I go to the open evening and Keith's art was on show. And that is me at the kitchen sink. Well, he did care about the world. He cared about people. He saw the very bad in the world. And he saw the good.
As written by Keith, art is a result of an urge, controlled and applied by the will of the artist. The exhibition is open to the public and will go on till the 9th of February. Melissa Fernando, Lewisham, ELL+.
And now we are joined by Anilesh, Director of the Goldsmiths Confucius Institute for Dance and Performance. Welcome to the show. Appreciate.
Thank you.
My first question is, there were celebrations all over London. So is it that for the celebrations now, or is it continuing?
It's absolutely continue, because Chinese New Year, we call it, especially in the West kind of like world, is people think it's Chinese New Year celebration, but I would personally add in our culture, we would say it's a spring festival. The reason why for that is Chinese New Year, for whatever the reason we think is only a few days, right? But it's actually, I would say, more than probably 15 days.
And as long as I know, every year is represented by a certain animal, and this year is the year of the rooster. Can you tell more about this?
Sure. Probably majority of the people would know there's 12 zodiacs in China and in the Chinese sign. For the year of the rooster, obviously, again, it's take the turn. It's kind of like a circle running. So now is the year of the rooster.
Whenever we talk about this Chinese New Year, we talk about line dancing. And also there's one personal question that I always wanted to ask, that what's the difference between lion dancing and dragon dance? Or are they both same?
That's a very good question, because actually we've been asked very often about that, and there's some confusion there. It's not just for you guys, actually for Chinese people as well. The reason why for that is because China is massive, and we have 56 ethnic minorities. We have line dance. The main difference would be the northern line dance and the southern line dance. Again, there's many different versions. I would just mention something very popular from personal understanding. Yeah. So the northern line dance is mainly, or majority of the ways of doing it is a very performance-like, to celebrate the festival and celebrate the Chinese New Year. So very often accompanied by dragon dance. But for the southern line dance is with a very kind of like ancient tale, is a story. Make sure we have a big line dance to scare the yang away.
So basically there are a lot of stories.
Loads of stories.
Lots of stories, like I read somewhere that it started as a tradition to remember your ancestors, and there are a lot of mythological stories behind it.
Absolutely.
Well, talking about this line dance, so we have footage of line dancing at Goldsmiths University from last night. We would like to show you.
Oh my God. Is it actual line?
Yeah.
Is it actual line?
Maybe.
This is our southern lion, as you can see.
Well, thank you, Anilesh, and thank you for joining us. Appreciate.
See you all next week.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.